Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about dips versus dumbbell chest presses. And I'm going to do this one ASMR style, so it's going to be just a nice calm voiceover. And I think I want to make the case for why, at least to me, that dips are vastly superior to dumbbell chest presses, barring potentially the incline dumbbell press. In other words, I'm saying that other than doing dumbbell presses on an incline, if you have access to a dipping bar and chains or a belt of any type that you can add weight, there's literally no reason to ever do a flat or a decline dumbbell chest press. They're just absolutely inferior in every way. And it's really ironic when people bring this up, because a lot of people will try to say, well, you say that stabilizers are good and it requires more stabilizers to do dumbbells for your chest than a barbell bench press. So they actually work better, but they actually don't, even though they have the potential for range of motion and that deeper stretch, which is an absolute bonus for muscle mass, and in some cases even strength, because they're correlated. There is a benefit there, absolutely, because you can get them deeper. But because of the wobbly nature of them, so many extra stabilizers are involved that it reduces tension on the muscles. And the potential for injury risk is relatively high because you can't go that heavy on dumbbells, right? You can't go that heavy. It's very difficult. And I mean heavy relative to what you can lift. They are essentially always going to be a secondary exercise. They're not suitable for a primary strength movement just due to the risk of injury, as we saw with Devon Physique. But they do have that potential for the deeper stretch, which gives them something unique that the barbell doesn't have. But when you look at something like a weighted dip, doesn't it do the same thing? In other words, in fact, a weighted dip, in many cases, you have the potential to go even deeper than with a dumbbell press, right? Because when you're using big dumbbells, the dumbbells actually start limiting your range of motion because they start hitting your chest. They start hitting your delts. They can actually limit your range of motion in a lot of ways, like the barbell can. So once you start limiting range of motion, they lose their benefits. And they already force you to limit weight. And limiting weight isn't a good thing when you're trying to stimulate muscle growth. They already force you to limit weight quite a bit due to the destabilization effect. But, people say, yeah, but they've got the added range of motion. And they do. But they start cutting range of motion as dumbbells get bigger. And they become awkward to work with and get the stretch also eventually at a certain threshold. So they start to lose a lot of their benefit. But with a dip, the more weight you add, the weight never gets in the way because the positioning of your shoulders versus the bars stays the same. The amount of weight doesn't limit the range of motion. And so it's possible on a weighted dip for many people to get enough range of motion to actually hurt themselves. So there is that added need for body awareness. But when you think about it, the only real benefit to the dumbbells is the deeper stretch. And that really is the case, guys. And I don't know how to stress that enough. Can't you do that with a dip? Of course you can. You can get the deeper stretch. Dips, from a hypertrophy potential perspective, are the best chest-focused exercise out there. And I'm not saying bench pressing doesn't have its place. I program bench and everything. I do bench. I do way more bench than weighted dips these days because it's a competitive lift. I can micro-load it easy. But I need it for various sports applications, right? I need it for that stuff. And it's easier to program because you can micro-load. You have specific ranges of motion that are always constant. It's easy to be consistent there. So it's easier from a programming perspective. But in terms of a hypertrophy potential, dips you can get really, really heavy on. It is possible to set yourself up in a situation to where you can safely do even 1 rep maxes. You could even do Bulgarian style max effort training with weighted dips. It can be done. They have the added benefit of a slightly longer range of motion, so a deeper stretch on the chest than the barbell. The only downside is that it's difficult to find bars where you can adjust grip with. Not being able to adjust grip with is a disadvantage, but sometimes you can find V-bars to where you can just move further up or down the bar to adjust grip with to get your ideal situation, right? Just like you can grip the barbell at different positions, wide, medium, narrow. You can find dip bars that do that. They're just harder to find. But it is a disadvantage for a lot of people depending on what you have access to. But you can get that deeper stretch. You can use a tremendous amount of weight. And the weight is one of the big advantages you have over dumbbells. You are able to create more tension. And when you are moving something through a given range of motion, weight matters. The more weight you can get on the bar, the more workload you can do, the more tension you can create on a muscle. That's a good thing. And, people want to talk about stabilizers. Well, we come back to that other point. Dips are an exercise that moves the body through space. Any exercise in which the body moves through space automatically uses more stabilizers, and it doesn't always mean at the expense of using a lighter weight. It just means that more muscles get worked. And that's kind of the point we get to. People will say things like, well, I'm trying to isolate the chest. My response would be, in what world would you ever want to isolate a muscle? And I'm not saying there aren't situations. There are situations where it benefits isolating a muscle, but for 95% of you out there, you are not going to be in those situations right now. You are not. So why would you want to do that? Don't you want bigger muscles everywhere? There's nothing wrong with making 6 other muscles grow while putting the primary emphasis on your pecs, right? Your pecs grow the most, but a lot of other muscles get some stimulation. That's not a bad thing. Then we come back to the athletic component and carryover. Any exercise that moves your body through space builds a lot of stabilizers that will help you get stronger at other lifts. Dips work more muscles than dumbbells or barbell chest presses do. And that's the reason you can get so damn strong on them, because they actually use the lats. That's one of the big muscles that gets used that people don't think of, because you think of the angle of a dip because of that downward deep decline position. And a decline barbell bench press is a useless exercise because it's such a short range of motion, but dips aren't. So the lats can actually be engaged. The abdominals get engaged. And people say silly things like the lats are used on the bench press. No, they're not. Not like they are on the dip. They don't actually help move the weight like they do on a dip. Yeah, they slingshot you a little on an overhead press. But on a bench press, only certain lifters with a certain structure who have massive lats can use their lats to help start the bench press. And that's because you can press your triceps against them. But if you're in scapular retraction, that can be difficult to do also. But they are used on the dip, and it has to do with the deep decline nature of dips. No matter how you go about doing them, the lats actually do help move the weight a little bit. So the lats get engaged, different parts of the back get engaged that do not get worked. And I repeat, do not get worked when doing a barbell or a dumbbell. And that's a big plus there. That's one of the things I tell guys. All these big movements that you do help facilitate back growth. That's why I laugh when people say things like, oh, I need to do extra lat work, extra trap work. You really got to wonder what exercises they're doing. Because I'll be honest, without even directly training your lats or traps, it's possible to get them fairly big. Right? Dips, deadlifts, squats, overhead presses, power cleans. Those muscles will actually build them up, and then you can do other stuff if you really want to blow them up. But that all adds up, and that's what you need to remember. Dips help grow other muscles besides the pecs, the front delts, and the triceps. And that's what makes them superior for mass. They build other muscles throughout your trunk, right? Through your torso, besides just those. So the other stuff is an added bonus. It's icing on the cake. That's why I have said it's actually possible to build a relatively big upper body doing nothing but weighted dips and weighted chin-ups if you get strong on them. I'm not saying it'll be perfect. I'm not saying you're not going to want to do some other things. But if you had to narrow it down, those two exercises will put a hell of a lot of size and thickness on your entire upper body. They absolutely will. And again, it's because the dips, just like the chin-up works other muscles that lat pull-downs do not work. The dip works other muscles that barbell and dumbbell chest presses do not work. And that becomes a big deal when your goal is to gain as much size as possible. And people don't think about that. Those secondary muscles that may not get a massive amount of work, you have to remember hypertrophy is a result of the accumulated stress that you put on muscles throughout your training week. Your curls aren't the only thing that make your biceps grow, right? All the accumulated secondary muscles that get worked on 2 or 3 different exercises besides the ones that you use for them primarily absolutely impact their overall growth over periods of time, because it's additional workload, it's additional fatigue. It all adds up. So yeah, that makes dips in a lot of ways a superior exercise. And everything that people try to do with a dumbbell chest press, particularly the flat or the decline, incline's its own animal. But with those others, everything that they're trying to do, the dips actually do a better job of, with added bonuses to it. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.